Welcome to NWA Cane Corsos Podcast, where we talk all things dogs.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to a show. Got another guest for you. One we've been anticipating for a little while. I have Mr. Kenny Troiano.
Yep.
Hey, Kenny.
How you doing?
All right, man.
I was just going to say I'm really excited to do this because, I know you're a member of the Breeders' Academy. We've been connecting through there, and you asked me to come on. And whenever I get a new member that, like, your members may not know, but I do teach people how to breed chickens. Okay. And, but I created a breeding program that really works for all animals. And I never anticipated seeing other types of animals getting into the membership, but I've got everything you can think of, all the farm animals you can think of. And I've got a number of dog breeders too. But I was watching, I want to say this before we get started, because I started watching some of your videos, and I do this with some of my members who have a specific type of animal other than chickens. And I go and I try to absorb their world, okay, and see how the breeding works for them and how their everyday life works as far as the breeding, the raising, the medications, dealing with customers, buying their first seed fowl. And when I was watching yours, it was kind of neat because I'm trying to remember. I think Lamont was one of them, and it was another one. I can't remember. Yeah, that was a really good video. And there was another one. I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, but I know you did 3 separate videos on dog breeding with him.
Mr. Muhammad.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched those a couple times because I was enjoying the fact that a lot of the problems you guys are having, or a lot of the things you guys are dealing with when it comes to raising, breeding, dealing with customers, is the same things we deal with. And when it comes right down to it, when it comes to breeding is breeding. And the issues that we face are the same. And I just found that really fascinating.
Right. Yeah, cool. So can will you tell the audience just a little bit about your background?
Okay. Wow, where to start? Well, let me try to tell you where I came from and how I got to where I'm at, and I'll try to sum it up the best I can.
Gotcha.
I've been breeding chickens since I was a kid, and it wasn't until somewhere in the late 90s, or maybe even, I think it was like 1996, that I started teaching. What happened was my local feed stores in the area knew I raised chickens. They didn't know anything about me. They didn't know my knowledge. They had no idea what I knew and didn't know, but it seemed like I knew more than them. So they were sending their customers to me to help them get started, basically. And so my daughters would listen to me and listen to me, what I was saying. They would read my books and the magazines that were available at the time on chickens. And it's overhear me listening, talking to my these people calling me, and they go, "Dad, man, you can do better than these guys in the magazines. Why don't you start writing for them?" And so I said, "No, that's not for me." I never thought of myself being a writer in the first place. So my daughter was 13 years old at the time. She goes, "Well, let me start writing some articles, see what happens." I go for it. So she started writing her little articles, and I sent them into the magazine. And they printed everything she wrote. And this went on for like almost 3 years. And I was just enjoying the fact that they were enjoying her articles. And then she started getting into high school and she's like, "Dad, I'm getting a little busy. I got a lot of homework. I'm not able to do this anymore. I like to take a break." And I says, "Okay, go ahead and take a break, Sam. And maybe I'll write up some articles and if you want to come back, you can." So I wrote a 4-part series on selection, and boy, did it take off. It got so much attention. It wasn't even funny. So I said, wow, this writing thing is kind of cool. So I started writing for the magazine from then on. And I actually wrote for that magazine for about 20 years. And in that time, I started writing for other magazines all over the world. I think there was like 6 or 8 different magazines that I ended up writing for. And in that time also, I wrote 2 separate books on breeding chickens. And those did really well, and I kept thinking, okay, am I going to be a magazine writer, or am I going to be a book writer? And then an organization called the Sustainable Poultry Network hired me to do seminars to head their breeding. So I traveled the United States teaching people how to breed chickens. And I liked it so much that I was thinking about actually continuing the seminars, but I ran across the idea of doing what ended up being an online magazine. I turned it into a membership, which we ended up calling the Breeders Academy. But also within that time in the breeding and interviewing other breeders, I got an idea how they did things. And I took the common denominators that they were using, took out all the old wives' tales, all the crap that was unnecessary, and I came up with a program we call the Founders Program. And I used it. It worked good for me. People would call me. I'd help them. I'd use that method to teach them. They would get back to me 2, 3, sometimes 4 years later and tell me how good it was. And that was the basis of the Breeders Academy, was that Founders Program. And then all the articles and programs on the website supported that particular program. But like I said, I never expected anything other than chickens, but we've got all kinds of other animals, including dogs, which is amazing. And I'm just so glad you guys see a value in it, that although I'm talking about chickens, you can, translate that for dogs too, which is
right.
cool.
Right. Yeah, I know I was, when we was emailing back and forth, I know I told you about like mentorship is not as strong in dogs as it is in chickens. I can find all kind of chicken, this or that. It might not be right, but it's a bunch of,
Not as much as you think. It's
Right.
There's a lot of people that think they know about chickens. They think they know about breeding, but and we talk about this all the time on my show. I have a show called Bred to Perfection, and it's just nothing but a bunch of wives' tales, superstitions, misinformation. And it seems like we have to work so hard to get past that, to get people to see a different way and we base, I would say most of what we teach is based on science,
Right.
Evolutionary biology, genetics, poultry breeding, animal breeding. And we try to stay away from all that other stuff. And that's the hard part, is getting through these people, getting through the fog and showing them the light, basically.
Right.
So there's not as many mentors as you think there are.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people trying to be mentors, but the information they're passing is not good.
Yeah. It's kind of like sort of like that on that side, but even just any kind of information ain't very good. But that's why I honed in on you, because I had questions myself that, a lot of times this was a big deal discovering you for me, because everybody don't have time to mentor you in their daily life. So to have a program where anybody could go to and get the information they need is kind of really neat. And it's not one of those things where people can look at like your YouTube videos and think, oh, I'm gonna put it together and I'm gonna figure out. You got to go into the academy, because it's going to blow your mind.
How many people have tried to re-engineer the Founders Program just by what we teach on the show?
Yeah, I did. I tried it.
Really?
I said, no, I'm not getting it. And then
there's something they're always missing until they actually get in there and look at it and go, oh my God, that makes sense. That was common sense. Why didn't I think of that? And I think about that too, because I can relate to it. When I started learning evolutionary biology, a lot of people don't understand how close the mechanisms of evolution really relate to how we breed our chickens. All you have to do is compare Mother Nature to us, artificial selection. So you have natural selection, artificial selection, Mother Nature versus us as a breeder, and how the mechanisms relate and how how similar they are. And when I started understanding that and started really digging deep into evolution, once I understood it, it was like, oh my God, that's how it works. Of course that's how it works. It's like common sense. Why didn't I think of that? And that's what I hear from my members when they look at how the Founders Program is set up, is, of course, why didn't I think of that? But I think it's funny that they try so hard to re-engineer it, and they miss the key elements. And there is a couple that are very important. So
right. So let's get into this conversation. I know you know how to pretty much, if I wanted to make my own breed of dog, you can walk me through it.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, but let's just get into the basics of, before a breeder, someone says they want to breed, Can you give them a foundation of things they must know? A brief summary of that.
Let's start with this. Okay. You need to know the animal you're breeding. You got to know, like if you're breeding dogs, and you have a certain breed of dog, you need to understand everything you can about that breed. What makes up the breed? There's for every breed, there's a standard. Follow the standard. That standard is going to tell you exactly how that dog should be made up and the structure of that dog, the conformation, the type of that dog. And a lot of people want to just breed them the way they want. They see certain traits on the dog and they want to exaggerate those traits and not sticking with the standard. So understanding the dog, understanding the traits that are important, and then understanding the genetics. Now, I don't know dog genetics, and I have, like I said, I have a lot of different animal breeders on the Breeders' Academy. I understand chicken genetics. I can talk all day about chicken genetics. But what I try to tell my members who do breed other animals, such as dogs, is go in. There's got to be information out there on the genetics of dogs. What are the genetic factors for the traits that they have? And then once you understand which traits are dominant, which traits are recessive, okay, so you're dealing with monogenic traits, which traits are incomplete and which are codominant traits. Once you understand that, then you can select the traits that better. So you understand that if I've got a dog here and I got a dog here, one showing a dominant trait versus a recessive trait, then when I put them together, I'm going to have a pretty good idea what they're going to produce. Okay, and also you're going to be selecting towards the phenotype of the animal. So what you see is what you're selecting. Now you also have the genotype, so there's going to be some hidden traits that may show up, some variation, some genetic diversity that may show up from time to time. And then all you need to do is decide, is that trait something I want to perpetuate, or do I need to cull? You know, for us, for chickens, that means culling can be many things. It could be process the bird, eat the bird, kill the bird, sell the bird, get rid of the bird, but I don't breed to it, okay? Mm-hmm. And then there's another part of genetics is really important that a lot of people dismiss, and it's the majority of the animal, believe it or not. The monogenic traits like the recessive and the dominant traits are important, and they do determine how that dog does come out, what the results are going to be. But it's the polygenic traits, the multi-gene traits, the quantitative traits that are going to determine how well that animal is going to progress. Now, one of the ways to determine whether that's a monogenic trait or a polygenic trait is if the trait you're looking at has variation. So you have a number of dogs with the same trait, but they have different variations, different intensities for that particular trait, then we know we're dealing with a multi-gene trait, a polygen. Poly meaning multi-gene. Okay, so, and in quantitative mean that it's measurable because we see a variation within the number of dogs we have within the family, so we know it's measurable. And if we can measure it, then we can improve it. So we always, let's say it's a trait that's really important, then we select the animals with the highest intensity of that trait, and little by little we improve it. Whereas monogenic traits it's either you select for it or you get rid of it. Okay, polygenic traits is always selecting towards the highest or lowest intensity depending on that trait. So once you understand that, then you can select the animals that you need that will progress the family, and it takes the guesswork right out of it.
Right. So, and I hear you talk on your show a lot about selection. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure it's probably a longer route, but would you want to get the same birds or same dogs from the same breeder, or would you want to get one from one breeder and another breeder? What's the best way to you?
Well, for chickens, it's really tough to find a good breeder, okay, where you can get all the animals from one person. Most of the people that raise chickens and game fowl like I raise, they're forced into getting the best they can and start from there. And a lot of times that means getting a rooster from one breeder and a hen from another, put them together. And we call them, the Breeders' Academy, is your seed fowl. They're actually the Adam and the Eve of your strain. Mm-hmm. And so they start everything. And so sometimes it means, or actually most of the time, it means getting a rooster from one breeder and a hen from another breeder. And I tell them, understand what makes up the breed, understand the true type and conformation of that breed, understand the variety, so you're understanding the color, and then make sure you match the right rooster to the right hen, so that you're not having a lot of variation, you're not having a lot of contrasting characteristics, because although I believe you can create a family from any male and female, if they're the same breed variety and have the same characteristics, you're going to get there faster. So if you can find a breeder who has he's a good breeder, he has a really good strain, the birds represent their breed. I'm sorry, the dog, you got to have to.
That's fine. Yeah.
If the dogs represent their breed, then great. Then you can start from there. Any male and female that you start with, that's your Adam and your Eve. That's your seed stock. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that's what you're going to begin with. And then you just, for us in the Breeders' Academy with the Founders Program, you're just working your way through the program at that point. And then little by little, you see the family come alive, basically. So we have it separated into three parts. We have the genesis phase, which is where the seed fowl are. We have the transformation stage, is where a lot of the cleanup, a lot of the fixation of genes, the locking of genes happens. And then it works you into the foundation stage, where it's about, just fine tuning the family and actually getting them to the point when they're uniform, consistent, and they can repeat themselves. But as far as where you get your animals, if you can find a good breeder who has everything you need right there, then you're good to go. The last thing you want to do, as far as I'm concerned, is go someplace where you can't really get a good male and female to start with, where you have to keep going back to the breeder all the time for new stock. And one of the things the Founders Program does, it prevents you, or it helps you create the family without always having to bring in other people's animals, or even from the same breeder. Because anytime you bring in new blood, you introduce new weaknesses, new recessives, and the way the Founders Program set up is that it progresses you. So it always moves you forward. And I see so many people going right to line breeding, and they don't understand there's a lot that has to happen before that. So they get the two animals, they start line breed them, and it turns out that the animals that they're line breeding, that they started the line breeding with, weren't really ready to be line bred. There was a lot of things that needed to be done before they got into the line breeding process, and they just keep seeing so much variation each generation that they never actually get where they want to go. So the idea is to get the best animals possible, work them through the program to a point when they're uniform, consistent. What I was going to say, though, is a lot of times they line breed them, they get to 7/8, 15, 16ths of their offspring. Mm-hmm. Instead of creating like multiple lines, they actually bring in an animal like the original animal they got, and they breed the offspring right back to them and introduce all those traits that you were selecting out at the time, all those recessives. And then sometimes they hit what they call the dead end zone. They bring in a new animal from outside. Now they're introducing some recessives, some weaknesses, disease, lethals, and all that. So that makes sense?
Yeah, it makes a bunch of sense. Yeah, one thing about it, some of my favorite breeders, when you go to the yard, or you can look on social media, it's their dogs. That's where I'm trying to get, where it's Joe's dogs. Yeah. So that family, keeping things tight. So for the audience, what all types of breeding, and can you give a brief explanation of what they are without stepping on the Breeders' Academy's toes too far?
Okay. So we're talking about like breeding methods, maybe?
Yeah, breeding methods. Yes, sir.
Okay. So there's a lot of them. Some of them you want to avoid. I'm not sure. I can tell you the ones we use for the Founders Programs are the same as the ones you should use for dog breeding. There's others like double mating. I'm not sure if you guys use that kind. It can be popular sometimes for the chicken world. I try to avoid people using that. I try to tell people, try to stay away from crossbreeding or even outcrossing. Now, the seed fowl, a lot of times, like I said, you're starting with animals that are not related. many times. That's outcrossing. Okay, you just got to make sure that it's the same breed and variety. So, but I wouldn't outcross after that. Once you get the strain going, I wouldn't even consider outcrossing. Some of the traits that you might want to think about or understand is the difference between backcrossing and line breeding. A lot of people think they're line breeding when they're actually backcrossing, and some people are backcrossing when they think they're line breeding. Line breeding is a really popular one, but a lot of people don't understand the true function of line breeding. And basically, it's to clone the animal. The animal that you selected to head that line should be a good representative of its breed, free of have really good health, free of defects, free of disqualifications. It should be a animal worth cloning. And then you breed to its daughter, granddaughter, great-granddaughter, if we're using the male as the head of the line. Now in chickens, a lot of times we try to head the lines with the females because we get better results overall. The female has really good mitochondrial DNA, has a lot to do with the growth and development of the offspring, the overall health of the offspring, where we get a good male, he can have really good prepotency, but sometimes we got to make sure that he's the right specimen for it, because we're not really replicating his traits as we are replicating his quality. Okay, so there's a trade-off. Do you head the line with the female or you head the line with the male? And what it comes down to is, what's the best one you have? Is it the female the best one, what you have, or is it the male? And sometimes that's what dictates that. So it's breeding the common ancestor to its each generation. So daughter, granddaughter, great-granddaughter. And I always tell people, go as far as you can until you start seeing faults, because the idea is to clone that animal. And the farther you can go, the more you can clone it. Now, a lot of people think they're line breeding when they're actually backcrossing. And backcrossing happens when you take two, like we're talking about the seed animals, a lot of times they're unrelated. So basically, we're either doing a cross or we're doing an outcross. And backcrossing is taking the offspring from that cross or outcross and breeding the best offspring back to what its best mother or father. Never both. A lot of people want to take the offspring, breed the males to the mother, the females to the father, and then they try to go in different directions right off the bat. You want to take, let's say, the offspring, you evaluate the offspring, the males look probably better than the females, the mother tends to be a little bit better than the father, and so you say, okay, that seems like the best combination, and I breed let's say the son back to the mother, okay? Because basically what you're doing in the backcross is you're breeding let's say the mother in this case, to her hybrid son. Okay. And the whole idea of doing a backcross, it's different from line breeding where you're cloning the animal. In backcrossing, you're basically trying to get more from the parent. And so what happens is you breed the seed animals. It's stumbling me up because I'm trying to stick with dogs and I keep wanting to go to birds.
Hey, just do it. Yeah. Okay. I know it's going to be hard. Yeah.
I'll do the best I can. You breed the seed animals and you look at the offspring, and some people say, well, the offspring aren't quite as good as the parents. They're kind of lacking. And some people abandon the strain right there. That's when you want to do a backcrossing. Okay. So you look at the animals, you say the offspring, you say, okay, they need a little work. So I'm going to pick the best one out of that. I'm going to take it back to its parent. And I keep breeding, I keep backcrossing the offspring back to the parent, the original parent, until I get offspring that are better than the parent. And then I go from there.
So backcrossing is used when you're going into a brick wall. Like, I might have to, is that a fair assumption?
I guess you could say that. We always tell people in the Breeders' Academy is look at the offspring. Are the offspring better than the parents? If they're not, you go in one direction. If they are, then you go in another direction.
Gotcha.
But that doesn't mean that you abandon the strain just because the offspring are better. It just means a lot of times you just need a little more from that parent.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, let me ask you about this. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So, a lot of us, we're going to start, probably within a family of dogs. And it takes a longer time to get where we are than you guys, because you guys can put them on the ground real fast.
And bigger numbers too.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So being that, what is your best advice to us to lessen on mistakes, being that we don't have the same times you got and things like that, or we can't put the same numbers down?
Yeah. That's the hard part. And that's where I find animal breeders have more difficulty in making the progress that we chicken breeders in some animals that produce a lot of offspring. We can make, like I've got breeders that breed quail. They're producing 3 or 4 generations in 1 year. They can make huge progress in the 12 months time, even faster than us chicken people. So the best thing I could tell you is have faith in the program, of course, but this is where you have to find the best animals to start with. Because if you're finding animals that have faults or defects or have health issues, it could take you a lot longer to get there, or you may never get there. So you really do got to start from the beginning. But there really are no shortcuts. You just got to be patient. But if you select the right animals in the beginning, you're going to get there a lot faster. I always tell people the transformation stage is kind of the most exciting because you see the most changes. That's when you see a lot of changes. And that's also the time when people freak out and they go, wow, there's so much variation and there's so much genetic diversity. And, they just think they're not going anywhere, when you don't have to breed to all the animals they produce. You just want to breed to the 2 that are the best. They're going to move your strain to the next level. So I think you can't replace patience. You gotta stick with the program. You gotta be willing to be patient. And if you're looking for shortcuts, those are the people who are going to fail. That's just the process. Breeding is breeding. Get to where you're enjoying it, no matter where you're at in the program, no matter how they're turning out. As long as you see the offspring are improving each generation, even if it's a little bit, you're doing good. Okay, that's the key, is that you want to see improvement each generation. If they're not progressing, then, and no matter what you do, then you might have to get rid of the animals that you're using and maybe start over with something better from a better breeder, maybe, And sometimes, I don't advocate spending a lot of money on animals, but sometimes you get what you pay for. And so sometimes it's better, if you're really serious, to save the money, find the best breeder. And if he has a good reputation, has really good animals, sometimes it's, a good idea to pay what he wants and start with really good animals from the beginning,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So another thing you teach on a lot is biosecurity.
Oh yeah. That's hard. That's hard for you guys, right?
Yeah, because you guys, Kenny calls like crazy. You know what I mean? Like, hey, he don't mess around. Ain't nothing gonna be on his yard. But in the chicken world too, feel free to talk about chicken. I don't want you to think you can't talk about chicken. Okay.
Well, I want to relate to your dog breeders, because they're going to look at this, go, oh, he's just a chicken breeder. He doesn't know anything. This is a whole different world. And I agree. I mean, what I do is different, but although we are breeding different animals, and the selection process is different, the traits we select for are different, the breeding process is the same. It doesn't change. It's the same thing. So understand that. I know the genetics are different. I know I'm selecting for different traits. It's a completely different animal, but just understand the breeding process is exactly the same.
Right. So you don't let people on your farm, on your yard.
No, not anymore.
If a chicken, what is it? If they get sick, you got your program.
Yeah. Let's talk chickens, because you guys, as dog breeders, have to decide how you want to do it. And I'm going to tell you how we do it as chickens and how we do it in the Breeders' Academy. Mm-hmm. Is I breed for disease resistance. I don't believe in medications or vaccinations. My birds have to be able to survive in the environment that they're in. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so, because we can produce so many numbers, a large number of birds, then whenever I get a sick bird, then I'm going to cull it. I'm going to cull anything that's sick or has been sick, and I'm going to only breed to the healthy. And little by little, I'm going to breed a family that's resistant to disease and really hardy. But understand this too, that they are only resistant to what they've been exposed to in their environment. So if I were to take my birds to someone else's farm, there's no telling what they have over there that's hidden within the birds. Mm-hmm. And if my birds are not used to that, they will get sick. So whenever people, I don't sell birds, but I do get birds to my members. So I tell them when they get birds from me, quarantine them, make sure they're okay, put a sacrificial bird with mine after 30 days, see what transforms, see if anything shows up, see if they could become symptomatic for any disease. And if they're good, and you can put them with them. Because my birds may be hiding diseases they're resistant to here or immune to, but pass to their birds, and their birds can be passing it to my birds. So you take a risk. But we breed for resistance. We don't use medications. We don't use vaccinations. Anything that's sick, we cull. We only breed to the healthy. And I haven't seen a sick bird forever. And one of the things, I don't know if it works for you guys exactly, but like worms. Okay. A lot of people in the chicken world will worm their birds. This is crazy. Okay. Either every 2 weeks or every month. And they're just poisoning the birds. Okay. And I have two guests on my show that are regulars. One is Peter Brown. They call him the chicken doctor. Okay, he basically sells a lot of medications, vaccinations, and it's amazing we're friends because I'm against the medications and vaccinations, but that's how he makes his living, but he still comes on my show. So, And then I've got Dr. Gallardo, who's a poultry veterinarian from UC Davis. And so I learned a lot from those guys. And one of the things they tell me when it comes to worms is it's okay. I know this is not with dogs. Okay. So just bear with me. Is it it's okay to have a certain amount of worms in the bird because it helps the bird build an immunity and resist worms overall. So anytime the bird gets infested, if the body is where it should be, it's going to fight that and expel those worms, and it's going to help be healthy. Same thing with coccidia. A certain amount of coccidia is good. And a lot of these guys, they use copper sulfate, they use warmers, and they're destroying the gut by stripping them of this coccidia, of the worms. And they don't realize it, but they basically have an unhealthy bird. They have to keep doing that to keep them healthy. And if they just let them build resistance with a certain amount, a low number of those things in their system, they'd actually be healthy overall, so that when they got hit, they would be able to, withstand it. It's all about the loads. So as far as you guys with dogs, you guys are going to have to determine, whether those diseases can cure themselves or whether they can build a resistance to it and then go from there. So I'm not going to tell them not to use medications or vaccinations or take them to the vet. I mean, that could be completely different than what we do here. But I do believe in biosecurity. And you're talking about biosecurity. Mainly for me, what that means is limiting people from coming on your yard, bringing disease, limit the birds leaving your farm and coming back, or buying birds and bringing them to your yard without quarantining them, trying to manage the wild populations, try to manage the diseases that are in your yard, try to stay away from medications, try to cull the sick, try to breed to the healthy. And sometimes in the beginning, that's hard. You have to kind of work into that. But if you do it properly, you can get to the point when you never have a sick bird. Or I don't know about, now you'll have to tell me about dogs because I don't know if it's the same thing for dogs.
Well, it depends because one thing I used to do, and it made me get out of breeding them really fast, was Frenchies, because you got to be a baby doctor. You know what I mean? They're weak, and especially if they got they're bred for color. I'm not talking about the standard, but just even their makeup. They're can't breathe well. You have to have incubators and things like that. So that really made me fall out of love with Frenchies. And, as I begin to study a little more on breeding and everything, I'm at the point now, if it's weak, I don't help it. My last litter, I had one like a little breathing. Wife said, stick it back there with mom. Next morning, he was doing fine. Okay, he's supposed to be here. So there's little things like that. Being preventive of mosquitoes cause us problem with dogs bringing stuff. So, like spraying your yard, disinfecting your yard. I don't even, I may be careful how I say this because people locally look at me. But even my puppies, like I was having a problem when I would bring puppies in the vets coming out of there with parvo.
Oh, yeah.
So giving my own shots, not even bringing my puppies into environments until they're fully vaccinated. And like you said, don't let them go places. Like dog yards are a no-no for us. We just don't put them in there. There's just too much stuff out there. So that's some of the ways I do my biosecurity. And horse spray. I do worm with an ivermectin pyranol duo thing, but not really all the time. I just try to keep my yard treated, and I will spray them with horse spray, and to cut down on medications going inside of them. That's just me.
Yeah, it's got to be tough for you guys because you need the animals to be socialized. So you need to get them off your yard around other people. I know there's some areas that need to keep away from, like you said, that where there's just so many dogs and so many different diseases that they're going to be exposed to. So I would think biosecurity would be really tough for you guys.
Yeah, but socializing to me where I live, not a really big deal. I don't really care if they really socialize. My biggest deal is they got manners. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So even though they're not around people like that, the neighbors' kids can come down, play with them. They get that kind of exposure. If I take them in the vet, they're not gonna go crazy. But like you probably seen this show. I always had an issue about people coming up, touching the dogs. It's hard for me to say no, but nowadays I just don't let them do that. So as long as that's training though. You know what I mean? So
you got to look at your animal, and we have a term called selection point. So, for you, it's the type, the conformation, the color, the breed characteristics. And for you also, it's the trainability, the behaviors, the temperament of the animal.
Temperament, yeah.
Yeah, those are all selection points. And so you got to consider all those. And I always tell my because we do the same thing with chickens, everything's a selection point, whether it's the type, the conformation, the color, but also the behaviors, the temperament. We don't train them, but to you, that would be a selection point too. And in the health of the bird, to me, that's a selection point. But everything's I forgot what I was going to say. Everything's a selection point. And so you have to consider the complete package. And I would tell you guys that too, is some people get caught up on selecting for one trait and then, not paying attention to the other or neglecting another trait. And we call it tandem selection, where you're always paying attention to one trait at a time. And I always, you want progress quick. It will seem like you're not making progress in the beginning, depending on the animals you start with, but you'll see that the gap of progress or the gap of quality will tighten as you go, and it'll become easier. But I always tell my breeders, select for the complete package. They try to produce as many offspring as you can so that you can select the one that has most of everything. So it's the best of the offspring that has the best type, conformation, color. And so if you want to make progress, try to select, nothing's perfect. Not with chickens, not with dogs. Don't ever expect anything to be perfect, but you want to strive towards perfection. And as you do, you reach excellence. Okay.
Right.
Every family, every animal, every family, every strain can be improved. It never stops. The breeding never stops. That's why I say be patient. Because the job as a breeder, never stops. You're always trying to improve them.
Gotcha. Hey, so man, you got to bring me back on this one, because I was trying to remember something I heard you say, and you said it was to a point of something like it won't work. Your strain is not going to be good unless you have a few things covered all the way around. And one of them was health, and one of them was biosecurity. Wasn't there another thing you said to keep a family good? I forget when it was. Are
we talking about the three-legged stool?
Tell me about that.
Okay. That's and it relates to everything. It's Mother Nature, it's natural selection, it's genetics, it's selective breeding, it's the improvement of the strain, it's epigenetics. Okay, a lot of people want to disregard epigenetics. And when you look at epigenetics, it's whenever you take an animal from its environment and put it in its new environment, things are going to change. Okay. Some traits are going to be expressed that weren't expressed before. There's something about the environment that's going to change that animal, and it's going to express traits that you didn't see before, nor did the other breeder. And then you're either going to select them or cull them as you go, and to either take advantage of it or get rid of it. But we break it down in the academy as a three-legged stool. So basically you have the environment and how you manage your strain. Okay. For us, it's how we manage our farm. Okay. So you have the environment, farm management. The second stool would be nutrition and health. So you want to provide the best nutrition you can, and making sure you select in the beginning health, and then make sure you manage that health in a proper way, so that hopefully you're moving towards a resistance. The last thing you want to do is breed a strain that always needs medications, always needs help. And you said it earlier, when you see a weak animal, you get rid of it. And the heart does play a part in it. But as a breeder, you have to try your best to get past that, because if you're keeping weak animals and you end up breeding to them, you're going to produce weak animals. Weak animals produce more weak animals. So selection plays a big part in that. And then the third leg would be genetics and the inheritance of traits and how they're passed to the offspring. So understanding the genetics, understanding the traits that the dog has and the genetic factors of those traits, knowing how to select them, and knowing whether they're dominant, recessive, whether they're polygenic, that's going to help you select them and improve them. I'm trying to, there was something I was going to say. So if you look at it as a 3-legged stool, and if you're missing one of those legs, let's say the genetics aren't quite right, or the health isn't quite right, and that leg is either broken, dysfunctional, or missing, you're just not going to raise a great strain. You want to do your best to manage all 3 legs properly and try to keep them at their best. The better those 3 categories, those 3 criterias, the better strain you're going to have, and the more progress you're going to make. So those are just things to consider as you're selecting them, as you're buying them, as you're bringing them home, as you're selecting them, as you're breeding them, and eventually you get there. So it's just another way to select and improve and progress your family.
So are you still an active chicken judge?
I'm a judge. I'm a certified judge with the American Game File Society. I just haven't had time to judge lately. I used to do a lot of judging. I'm so busy with the membership and the shows. I've had to turn down a handful of shows. I enjoy it. It gets me out there with the people and talk with the people. I do get kind of frustrated because, hopefully it's not with the dog world, but it is with the chicken world. I'll go do a show, I'll judge them, and down deep I'm thinking to myself, I wouldn't give $5 for any of these birds. They just need so much work. There's so many faults, and I try to help the breeders. I try to give them suggestions, say, okay, this bird has this particular fault, this particular defect. You don't want to breed this. This is why. So I educate them as I go when I'm doing my judging, which takes longer, but I look at it as a way to educate people and help people. I would sometimes have shows so big that I'd have my mentor, Tony Seville, come out and help me. He wasn't much help sometimes because, and maybe this is where I learned it, he would be teaching them too. I'd be halfway through. He just got started. He's still talking to people. So I end up doing most of the show anyways because he's so busy talking to everybody, sharing things. And people loved it, so it was good to have him there. But it took forever to do the shows. But that's how I look at it, is hopefully I can educate them. Hopefully I can make a difference. And I'm all about the preservation of the breed. And if I can do anything I can to keep these breeds good and keep them going, because we're losing them left and right. People are just adding new blood, cross them. They do the game. Let's see what we get. The game, okay? The experimentation game. And I try so hard to tell people, okay, if you want to do those crossings or whatever, that's fine. Just do it on the side as something fun.
Right.
But you should try your best to select a breed that you enjoy, that you can see yourself breeding for many years, and put everything you have into those and do your best to preserve them, improve them, maintain them for future generations. And that's kind of what I'm all about, Right.
Yeah, you should. You got to have some kind of code of ethics, because, you'd be surprised how many times, you talk about ethics in breeding where people say, oh, it don't matter. They don't know. But, you put it does matter, because, like, I've had, like, a customer call me, this dog is doing this right now. How do I deal with this? And it's important to know that stuff, because guess what? Her mom might have did that at the same age. They just don't, what they tell you, it don't matter. The customer, once they pawn it off of you, they don't give a damn what happens. They got your money. So it's important to me. And
it's scary because there's a lot of breeders out there just in it for the money. We call them peddlers. Okay. I don't know how you guys deal with dogs.
I call them puppy pushers.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're just in it for the money. And if it looks like a certain strain, they call it a certain strain, whether it is or not. And it's sad because for us, I would say 90% of the birds out there are either crossed or just plain out mongrels. They just got so much different bloodlines within them that's not even funny. And I go on social media at the different group pages out there for chickens and game fowl. And it's sad because most of these guys have no idea what the proper type confirmation and color should be of that particular bird. And they're just always just adding new blood, never getting there, never making progress. And my co-host Frank Bradley and myself, we just get so frustrated with it that sometimes I just got to take a break. I just can't look at that stuff anymore. I can't get through to them. The only way I can really teach them properly is to get them on the Breeders' Academy, because that's where I do all my teaching. But anytime I do reach out and try to help people, and don't do this, I learned a long time ago that if they ask for your help and they come to you, they're more receptive and they're going to listen. They're going to probably take your advice for the most part. If you go and kind of solicitate your advice and kind of push it on them, or maybe suggest something and they weren't ready for it, they come back fighting. So I don't do that anymore.
Right. If you give anybody anything, any kind of whatever it is, they know you could be right, but if they're not ready to receive it, they'll kill you. Yeah.
And that's what makes the show so fun that we do. The website is the followers and the members there. It's so fun because they want to learn. You can feel it. They're asking really good questions and they're not getting upset. We're giving great advice. They're following it. They're excited to get it. It's like we do coaching calls in the Breeders' Academy, and they're fun because you can feel their motivation. You can feel how excited they are, and they're just like sponges. They just want to learn everything they can. Sometimes I have to kind of put the brakes on because they're in there. They go, okay, I'm in there for an hour. I want to learn as much as I can. They just ask all these questions. I go, whoa. Let's figure out where you are at right now. Let's deal with that. And let's progress you and your strain. Okay. And then if you have other questions, we can always do another coaching call. We can address them then, because they just want to absorb as much as they can. Right. And that's always the best thing to do. So the coaching calls have come to Frank's the same way. We got to figure out where they are, deal with that, and then, move on. Okay. Go do that now. And then you come back.
You got to find out what you are, where you are. You got to find out how to navigate this. The Breeders' Academy, you could tell you put your heart and soul in that thing, man. Even to where the point I said, man, this man got a library of recommended books I've never heard of. I ordered them all on eBay.
Yeah, it's funny. That's about 20 years worth of. I've been teaching for 25 years now. Okay, so that's 20 years worth of work in that website. And I talked to another dog breeder. He was I have one dog breeder. God, what's the name of that dog? He's from another country. It looks like a German Shepherd, but it's like a guard security type dog.
It's either a Dutch Shepherd or a Malinois, probably.
Yeah, I think it's that. And he breeds dogs for the military there, and he's one of the members inside the Breeders' Academy. But I had another dog breeder who said, "How come you don't have a section for dogs?" And I'm like, well, I think that wouldn't be right because I'm not really a dog breeder. And I think dog breeders would see that I'm not a dog breeder. And so I'm giving advice. They would see right through that. And I don't think that's right. So I have to stick with what I know best and hope that, because I never planned to be for other animals, but I hope that like you're able to see the benefits of the website and apply it to your animals.
Right. Okay? Right. You got to know your own breed's conformation. You got to know certain things about it, about gait and things about that. But the science of it, hands down, the Breeders' Academy cannot be touched. I can't find any other resource better than it. And it ain't nothing you just jump in and like, I'm going to be done in 2 months. Nah, it's going to be a long haul. You ain't going to pay 3 months and get out, you know.
People think they can, but then they get in there and find out it's a whole different story. So I usually tell people, if you want to become a member and you want to learn about breeding, I would plan on being a member for like 3 years. Okay.
Yeah.
And then we have a Start Here page, and it walks you through some of the most important programs, and it shows you where you should start. And then from there, you can use the website as a reference and work your way through it. But and we have master's class videos now. We try to produce as many of those as we can, and it takes a lot of the programs that are in there, and basically it's Frank and I discussing those programs. So you're learning the information within a discussion, and then I put up banners and things like that. But I just think it's so cool that, you know, there's breeders like you with dogs, goats, sheep, cattle, horses, rabbits, and that they're able to actually take the information that I'm providing and apply it to their animals. I never planned on it, but I just think it's so cool. You know,
one of my biggest learning events is when you and your wife Nancy. That's right.
Yeah,
thanks, Nancy. Mm-hmm. She was pressing you in one episode about sublines.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, and
where she was driving me crazy and make me pull my head out, you know?
It was the best show though, because you had to dig in and explain it, because I was like there with her. Yeah, I'm not getting it, and then you came down the court like Michael Jordan, and it landed that plane really nice. So that's one of my favorite episodes.
That's why Nancy's part of the show, because Frank and I have what we call the curse of knowledge, that we think what we know everybody else already knows. That if we say something, they're going to know exactly what we're talking about. And that's Nancy's job. We made that very clear, that she's in there to make sure that we're saying it properly, that we're clear about what we're saying, that we're hitting the points and we're answering it. So she's thinking all the time how the average person's thinking, what are their questions. And if we're not quite hitting it, she'll jump right in and help us.
Right.
So she's absolutely needed within the show just for that reason, because I think I would lose people if it wasn't for her, because we do feel like, of course, this is how you do it. You know, you do this, you do that. We leave everything in the middle out sometimes, and then she makes us fill in the gaps. So
okay, I'm about to do that to you right now.
Okay.
so I want to go back to something you was talking about, mitochondrial DNA.
Yeah.
So is it better for the female to be the better specimen or the male, or doesn't matter?
Okay. Now, understand this, you know, we push for the female more, but you have to understand too that the genetics are different than animals. Now, we look at chickens, or let's look at animals, because that's what you guys know. It's the XY factor. Okay. The male determines the offspring. Well, in chickens, it's actually reverse. It's the female that determines the offspring. So things, how we select and the birds we select and how we head our lines are a little bit different. But however, when you look at mitochondrial DNA, it's the powerhouse of the cell. Okay, it's responsible for the overall health of the strain. She's the matriarch of the family when you think about it, because she has a lot to do with how those animals grow and develop, the overall health of the family. Okay, so she has, and as you know, if the birds don't develop properly and grow properly, and they're not healthy, they're never going to reach their potential. So she's really important. Should she head a line when it comes to dogs? That I'm not sure I can answer exactly, because I think you have to, and this is all across the board when it comes to whether it's chickens, animals, mammals, dogs, cattle, whatever. Okay. Prepotencies, typically, it can be both, but prepotency is typically a male thing. When we see the level of prepotency within an animal, we usually see a higher prepotency when it comes to the male. And he determines not the traits that are expressed, because that he doesn't supersede genetics. He doesn't supersede the effects of epigenetics, but the overall quality. We can see that if the offspring are showing like the males have his masculinity, okay, we can see that he's got great potency. If the quality animal seems to favor the mother, then he's not that great of a specimen, and we can assume that she has the potency. the idea, as far as I'm concerned, is finding a good male that has really healthy, represents its breed, has the traits that you're looking for, has good proposancy, but breed them to a female that represents her breed and everything, that has good mitochondrial DNA. However, the only way to find out whether she has good mitochondrial DNA is in how the offspring come out. So if the offspring come out of her really healthy, really active, they're not lethargic and lazy, and you see that they're growing and developing properly and they're always healthy, then we can assume that the mother has an effect on them that the father is not producing, and that is the mitochondria. Okay. Oh. So I wouldn't get caught up on that for you guys. I would actually say, I need to find the best male and I need to find the best female, look at the offspring and how they're growing, developing. And if there's a problem, then we need to determine, is it the female causing the problem or is it the male causing the problem? So that's how I would look at it, I think.
But you also teach us about best to best.
I'm careful about that one, though.
Well, explain that.
Okay. A lot of people, that's what they fall on because they don't understand the breeding process. They don't understand the benefits of breeding programs. And so because they don't really know that there's a system, a breeding program, a proper one, has a systematic, actually a methodical way of going from one method to the next. So you're basically using multiple methods within one program. A breeding program's never just one method. A breeding program isn't just line breeding. It's not just backcrossing. It's not just inbreeding. A good breeding method has multiple methods within it. So if you're doing things properly, you're progressing your family through those methods. Now, a lot of people don't understand that. So they say, either this is what they're doing or this is what they tell people. I just find the best male and find the best female. A lot of times they don't even know what that means, okay? They don't understand the criteria or the things those animals have to be the best, and then they bring them together. What I find when I actually dig in deep and ask them what they mean by best of the best, a lot of times they're actually doing crossing or outcrossing. They're just finding animals from different people and then putting them together and seeing what they get. Yeah. And they're always scratching their head when they're not seeing, when the offspring are not progressing generation after generation. They're just getting mixture of things. They're seeing variation. They're seeing genetic diversity. Every year is a crapshoot. So when I use the word best of the best, there's a place in the Founders Program where best of the best is used. Okay. But we're using it in an established family. We're not actually bringing in new animals. We're not adding or infusing new animals into the mix. We're using it within the, I would say best of the best when we're moving from one method to the next method. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's when we're using best of the best. Obviously, you got to breed the best. I would never say, and that's when it works. When it doesn't work is when you're breeding an animal just because it has a name, or bring an animal just because it comes from a particular breeder, but it doesn't have the quality or it doesn't have the traits that it should have. I see people falling into that trap too. So yeah, there's a place for best of the best, but it's within the breeding program, and it's usually used from moving from one method to the next method. But that's it. Not as a breeding program. Don't think of best of the best as its own breeding program. It doesn't work like that.
Okay. Another thing you teach us is about crossing. I personally, not trying to speak for you, but I don't think you like it very much.
No. Well, yeah. Crossing, okay, depending on, let's say a work animal. Okay, let's say a working dog. And you can tell me if they don't do that or not. But I can see where it would come into play. Let's say you're you're trying to put together an animal that's bred for a particular purpose, and you want it to be bigger and better than its original parents. So we actually we have a pure strain here and a pure strain that. We breed them together. We get a hybrid animal that actually can have the purpose that we're looking for. That's when crossing is beneficial. But as a general rule, I would say no, other than the fact that if that's all you can get to start your strain, like in chickens, we can only get the best rooster we can with the best hen. They come from different breeders. They're not related. Then sometimes we don't have a choice. We have to cross them or outcross them to begin the strain, but after that, I don't cross them. Okay. And when I tell people too is never mess with your foundation line. Mm-hmm. So once you have a foundation, you never want to experiment with them. You never want to add this to see what you get. Okay. Mm-hmm. I always tell people, keep the foundation pure, improve them through selection, work with the program. If you need to add new blood or do some kind of experimentation, then what you were talking about a subline earlier, then we'll create a line separate from the main line, and we'll do all our experimenting through the subline. And if it pans out, then great. We can work with it. We can make a strain out of it or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Right. And that's another thing that I don't think a lot of people in the dog world know about the sublines. I'm pretty sure about it. And when you talk about crossing, most of the time in our world, it ain't a pure dog over here. It ain't a pure dog over there. It's just boom, Yeah. And it's but I didn't notice until I started studying the stuff you teach is that you'll get that hybrid vigor, puppies come out badass, but it won't hold.
Yeah. It's hybrid. Okay. Hybrid vigor, you can't reproduce. Okay.
Right.
So it's not passed from generation to the generation. Nancy likes to say it's a one and done. That's her famous saying. It's a one and done. So whenever you have a hybrid animal, that's it. That's the product. Mm-hmm. Okay. Can you create a strain from that? Well, if you're starting from the beginning of the program and it becomes one of your seed animals, then that's where you're working. But you're working away from it at that point. You're never adding that. You're never adding that cross to your main foundation ever. Mm-hmm. So hybrid vigor is an incredible thing, but it's just not passed from generation to generation. A lot of people don't understand, like we were talking about potency and mitochondrial DNA. A lot of people think that they can get better potency or even better mitochondrial DNA by doing crosses. Actually, it's the contrary. You actually ruin potency and you ruin mitochondrial DNA whenever you add new blood, infuse new blood, or actually do a cross. Mm-hmm. You get the best potency. You get the best mitochondrial DNA. The more inbred the family is, the more pure the family is, the better mitochondrial DNA you get, the better potency you get. So it's quite the reverse from hybrid vigor. So they have different forms, different functions, different purposes. But whenever you're crossing animals to produce a hybrid, just know that's the product. That's it. That's where it stops. Yeah.
Right. So most of the time you see, I'm not saying this about all dog breeders, but just from my knowledge, the ones who breed more so your style are the guys where you mentioned earlier, the police dogs, or the pit bull dogs.
Yeah.
The other breeds, you say, if you even say inbreeding, line breeding, then you'll start a war on Facebook.
From what I understand from my other dog breeders is even the AKA allows some inbreeding. Not a lot.
AKC. Yeah.
Yeah, AKC. I'm sorry, AKC.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
They allow some inbreeding.
They do.
Inbreeding has a lot of benefits, but don't think of it as a breeding program, okay, or a breeding method, actually. Think of it as a tool. It's a great tool. It's one of the best ways we can clean up the family. It's one of the best ways we can fixate some of the beneficial genes. It's some of the best way we lock in those genes and maybe take advantage of some of the homozygous dominant genes that they have, and maybe not eliminate the recessives, but help hide them, because you'll never eliminate a recessive. Inbreeding is one of the best ways to progress a strain. It saves you. You asked me earlier what's one of the best ways to speed up the process. Inbreeding is it. It is with all animals.
Right.
And I've had cattle breeders who joined who were against it, followed my suggestion. They thank me, go breeders, all of them. That once they understood how inbreeding works and why you should do it, and also understand the detrimental sides of it, then you're able to progress a family. One of the programs I send people to right away when they join, it's in the Start Here pages, is the inbreeding course, so that you understand inbreeding. It talks about the pros, the cons, the goods, the bads, what to expect, when you do it. That way, so you're going into it educated. But if you're going to shy away from inbreeding, then this is my opinion. In my experience, is that you're not a true breeder, because if you understood the value and the benefits of inbreeding, you would do it. But I always tell people, and this is my caveat here, because as you know, we're not giving you a lot of information about inbreeding. We're just trying to tell you it's important. That doesn't mean that the average person just start inbreeding his animals, okay? Because you can screw them up too. If you don't understand what to look for and understand how to, when you look at the offspring, what the results you're getting, we always say that the offspring tell you everything you want to know about the parents. It'll tell you the past, the present, and the future. Okay. It'll tell you if you're going in the right direction or not and what direction you should go. And we talk about this in the Breeders' Academy. So I always tell people, if you don't understand inbreeding, don't do it. But if you understand it, it's the best tool you ever had.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. What is a breeder's goal? Is it to breed like Mother Nature plus the beauty? What is it? What's the difference in between a domestic breeder and Mother Nature?
Okay. The goal of a breeder is to create a family that represents the breed and him as the breeder. Okay. And he wants a family that's uniform, consistent, and can repeat itself. And replicate its own kind. So you want to get to a point like my chickens out there, I never get any surprises. They're right where I want them. They have the type, the conformation that represent their breed. I don't get any surprises. And that's where you want to be. Yes, you're going to improve them a little here and there. It's going to be subtle. But what I tell people is when you're relating Mother Nature to selective breeding is understanding the mechanisms of evolution help you understand the process and the methods of selective breeding. It really helps you understand it, okay? That we do certain things in selective breeding for a reason. And there's so many similarities between Mother Nature, natural selection, by evolution, to selective breeding. What I tell people is if you can do things as close to Mother Nature as possible, you're going to have a better strain. They're going to be healthier. They're going to grow and develop. They're going to reach their goal faster. But we still have to guide them. As selective breeders, we have to decide what traits they're going to perpetuate, what traits they're going to carry on. Because if we just let them breed randomly, they're going to go to the wild type pretty fast, and you're going to lose control of the breed. Mm-hmm. So although we want to stay close to Mother Nature, like for us chickens, we want to breed when Mother Nature would breed, like in the spring. Now, you guys are different. I understand that, okay? Mm-hmm. I guess you'd have to look at the wolf and understand some of the things about the wolf that you could take advantage with the dogs. I guess that's how you guys would do it. We look at the jungle fowl. What is it about the jungle fowl that's been able to survive and strive for so many thousands of years? How can we take advantage of that and apply it to our breeding? Okay. So I always tell people, it may not seem like it applies, but go into evolutionary biology, understand the mechanisms of evolution, try to imagine how those are used within a breeding program. Okay. Try to understand the traits that your dogs are showing or expressing or what they represent. Try to find the genetics so you understand the genetic factors of those traits so that you can select better. But things like genetic drift. Okay. For us, whenever we buy like a pair or trio from another breeder and we take that sampling of his birds and bring from his whole farm, that sampling, and bring it to our farm, we actually have the opportunity to make our strain better than his because we're dealing with a smaller number of genes, a smaller number of birds, and we're able to make bigger progress because he's dealing with a lot more birds and he's breeding more broadly where we're more tight and we can actually make bigger progress than him. So if we were to compare our birds to his in 10 years time, they'd look completely different than his, and whether they're good or bad will be depend on our ability to select and improve the family and using a proper breeding program, so if we look at the different mechanisms of evolution, we can see how we can benefit from them and use them in our breeding of our animals. Mm-hmm. So
okay, cool. So and then you also teach about strongly against adding new blood.
Adding new blood, yeah.
Adding new blood, yeah. Would you just briefly cover why not?
Okay. Even if they're the same breed, okay. Mm-hmm. And let's say you have a foundation, you're making progress, they're looking really good, but for some reason, a lot of people get scared because they're afraid they're going to be too inbred, so they think they need to bring in new blood. So what they do when they bring in new blood, they bring in new weaknesses. They bring in new recessives. They bring in new diseases. Okay. Basically what they're doing is they're recombinating the genes. They're actually changing their family forever through the animals that they're bringing into the family. Think of it like this. We use this as an example quite a bit. Let's say I have a clean glass of water. Okay. Clear as can be. That represents my family. That represents the years that I've been working on my family and to the state of purity that I got them. For some reason, I think I need to improve them. I find someone else who has an animal that seems better than mine. Instead of improving mine to his level by selectively breeding and improving them each generation, we want to jump the gun. We want to take his animals. We want to bring them into ours. So his animal is represented by a spoonful of dirt. Okay, so you pour that dirt into the glass of water. Basically what you did was you cross those two animals and you stir it up. Okay. So the idea some people have that now that I put his animal in mine, it's going to improve them overall, then I'm going to breed my animals back into them. And then little by little, I'll weed out the faults, have the benefits of that animal in my overall family over time. Okay. A lot of times what you're losing when you do that is the homozygous dominant genes, which you want. Okay. And you're replacing them with recessives and sometimes lethals. So what you think you're going to get at the end isn't what you think what you're going to get. So what happens is, so to do what they're saying is I'm going to keep pouring clear water, which is my original family, into that. And little by little, the water starts clearing and clearing, getting more and more clear to the point when it looks like it's the clean, sparkling water. But you take one of those drop things and pull out one drop of water, put it under a microscope, and you'll see evidence of that old blood. And it's usually not the traits or the genes that you wanted. So whatever you put into your foundation, there's elements of that particular animal that will stay there forever. And like I said, it's not usually the traits that you're hoping to improve your family. And what happens is you end up changing your foundation forever. They're never what they used to be. So I always try to tell people, especially if you do things properly, you start with the best animals properly, you work your way through the transformation stage. So you've done the cleanup, you've done the fixation, you've properly got them ready for the foundation stage. You fine-tuned them and they're starting to look good. Yes, they're going to be some improvement. Nothing's perfect. It's going to take a little while to keep improving them. Just be patient. But anytime you add new blood, you disrupt the whole thing. You just change them forever. So a lot of times you can improve them just through selection. You don't need to add new blood most of the time.
Selection is important.
Selection's everything. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So there are types of breeders that's dangerous, even for the bird community, right?
Oh yeah.
What type of breeders? What are red flags?
Peddlers are one, because they're not breeding towards a state of perfection at all. That's not one of their goals. Their goal is to produce an animal that looks. They add names to it. We call it the name game. So they get animals that look like a particular strain. That's what they call it. They're always adding new blood. They're never breeding towards a family or trying to create a strain. And they're just selling these birds under false premises. And these beginners are getting these birds and they think they're one thing, but they're not. And they never seem to make progress. And so they get discouraged and then they quit because they think it's impossible. And then they start believing the term that purity of blood doesn't work or it's not real. There's no such thing as pure. And I usually tell people there's two ideas of purity of blood. Now, we say that there's no such thing as perfection, but if you breed towards perfection, you reach excellence. But there's some breeders that they never add outside blood, but they never selectively breed. So the animals just seem to have contrasting characteristics. There's nothing uniform about them, but yet they're pure. Then you have some that are pure in family, but also pure in trait. So they're selectively breeding for a particular trait and improving that trait as they go. And that's the kind of family you want. But peddlers who are always adding new blood, just producing numbers, breeders who don't really understand the breeding process, so they're not properly selecting them. They're, my mind's going blank, but I would try to find a backyard breeder, and this can mean different things to different people, but just try to find someone who has a good reputation, is a good breeder, has good animals, and start with those, and try to stay away from those breeders who have thousands of birds, and you go on their farm, none of the birds look alike. They're all crosses. The original seed fowl, the original breeders they use, they've only got like a couple. I mean, there's just certain red flags that you need to look for. And I always tell my members, just do your best, the best you can, to go inside the Breeders' Academy and educate yourself on the proper conformation, the proper type, what defects to look for, what makes up the animal. Study all the programs and courses on selection, so that you're going to these guys' farm educated. So you have kind of an idea of what you're looking for, and forget the name. Don't hardly even listen to what the guy's saying sometimes, just kind of go in there and knowing what you're going to select. And sometimes it doesn't mean that you need to buy pure fowl right off the bat. You're looking for, basically, if you're starting a breeding program, you're looking for a rooster that represents its breed, free of defects, is healthy. Okay. And then you're looking for a hen that has the same criteria, and they don't have to, just when you're starting, they don't have to be related. It would be nice if they're related, but they don't have to be related. You can start from there. That's what's nice about the Founders Program, and that's what appealed to a lot of people, is because it's hard to find pure fowl, and it's hard to find good pure fowl. And this allows you to get animals that are unrelated and start from there, because that's, in the chicken world, that's most of the time where we're at.
How important is the breeding techniques in commercial industry?
Things have changed in the commercial industry quite a bit. Back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, we basically used like a New Hampshire bred to a Delaware for meat birds. Okay. And those birds were quite different. You got the hybrid vigor, but the birds had to be grown out a lot longer, like 3-4 months before you could actually process them. Actually, I thought they were better then. They actually taste better. Okay. Now, with the discovery of the crossing of a Cornish with, let's say, a white rock, we're actually able to produce offspring that are producing, we're producing offspring that we can process at 37 days old. So the birds you're buying in the store are only 36, 37, maybe 38 days old. They're basically baby chicks, and they grow that big. A lot of people think that we're pumping hormones and all kinds of stuff into them. It's just hybrid vigor. That's all it is. Okay. So the commercial industry's changed quite a bit on the birds they use for the market compared to before. And they don't just use any old chickens to do that. They have their own controlled families, their own strains that nobody else has. They're well protected, and nobody gets them. Okay. And they sell them to other companies, the baby chicks from that, or the eggs. So the same thing with the hatchery. So basically you have this company, I don't want to say their names here though, and they have their parent lines, grandparent lines, great-grandparent lines, great-grandparent lines, and they're all protected. And each one of those lines has its different stages. So the grandparent lines produce the grandparent lines, and they're all from different farms, by the way. And then the grandparent lines produce the parent lines, and those parent lines are what goes to like the hatcheries, so that they can't reproduce those birds. And then once they're done doing their thing, they have to buy all new parent stock to produce the offspring for the hatcheries again. Same thing with the growers. They're getting the offspring from those lines that are protected. So all they're getting is the bird. They can never reproduce them. They can't take those birds, grow them out, put them together. We talked about hybrid vigor. You put two birds together that with hybrid vigor, they don't reproduce in their own kind. So you get animals that are unpredictable. You get some big, some small. It's all over the board. You can't reproduce them at all. And so that's their way of protecting those lines. So things have changed in the chicken world, the turkey world, when it comes to commercial, compared to what it used to be. And am I answering your question right?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, it's a different world than it used to be. And so.
Yeah, it's about supply, demand, everything's fast.
It saves a lot of money. I mean, like I said, when you're producing a bird that's gaining 5 pounds in 37 days, you're saving a lot of money in feed and not having to pump medications into them, which they've changed quite a bit. There was a time when they gave them antibiotics to get them through some of the diseases, but the laws and regulations in different states have changed so much that they're not even really doing that. They're trying to keep things as organic as possible. They're trying to keep the birds away from, antibiotics, and they're just trying to keep them, biosecurity was a big thing, is they just try to keep them as safe as possible, get them to the processing as fast as they can. Same thing with the egg production. They have their grandparent lines, great-grandparent lines, and then they have their parent lines, and the animals, the birds that are producing the eggs aren't like a pure leghorn like they used to be. They're actually a cross between like a leghorn type bird, their own type breed. I can't even tell you what's in them these days. I do know that for the meat bird, the Cornish cross, they use Cornish, a white Plymouth Rock, and they're actually using a white leghorn these days for the production of those parent lines, so that they not only are producing the offspring with the hybrid vigor, but the parents can actually produce more eggs than they were before, so they can get more offspring on the ground than they were before. It's pretty interesting. We can, as breeders, I don't know about you as dogs, but chicken breeders, we can do it the same way. I mean, in some ways we do that. I protect my lines. Mm-hmm. There's some breeders that have lines that they won't let out. You won't get their pure stuff. You'll get crosses from those things, but you won't get their pure stuff. And it's a good thing and a bad thing. I mean, I'm glad that some people are taking putting that kind of attention into creating a family that's worth repeating. But, I'm about the preservation. How are you going to preserve them if you're not getting those original birds out to other people? But I get it. They're trying to make money,
Right. Mentorship. I've heard you talk about some, I don't know what it is about you, but you had like your mentor you found out was down the street from your house or something like that?
Well, that was just one of them. I've been really lucky that I've had so many mentors. I think that's why I'm able to do what I do, because each one of my mentors had a strength in a different area than others. The one that lived just down the road from me, it was funny that at the time I had some bannies, and the person supplying me the bannies, I got to talking to her. I go, God, I like these birds, but I want to get the larger ones. And she goes, oh, I know someone who has the larger ones. So she gave me his phone number. And I called them up, and his wife answered and said, I said, do you have this particular type of breed? And I'd like to buy some. And she goes, sure, come on over. Well, Tony wasn't there at the time. It was just her. And I had my 2 kids with me. And I'm like, I just want some chicks, So she took me up to the farm, basically sold me what I wanted. And it was kind of against Tony didn't know anything about it. And so a year went by, and I was like, I want to get some more of these things. So I called him up, and he actually answered the phone. And I said, hey, Tony, we haven't met. I talked to your wife, and I bought some birds off her. I'd like to get some more. And he's like, come on over. Well, I didn't realize how mad he was about that I came over and bought some of his birds, and he wasn't there. And he was prepared to rip me a new one. But we got together, and we hit it off right away, him and I. And the more I hung out with him, the more I learned. And he was talking about things that nobody else was talking about. Most of the people in the chicken world, they were talking about production, performance ability. They weren't talking exactly about type and conformation so much as station of leg. And there was some things they were focusing on or fixating on, but it wasn't the proper term, and it wasn't the proper way of looking at the bird. And so working with him and understanding the true makeup of the bird, the true selection of the bird, just wowed me. And I always kept telling Tony, you got to write a book, you got to do something. And he was like, no. And I think he had the opinion that nobody was going to listen to him anyways. But I took what he taught me, and that's what I started writing the articles with, was what I was learning from him. And to this day, I thank him all the time, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be doing what I am today, because he brought science into the fold. He brought common sense, into the fold. And we, little by little, we're changing the way people look at the birds and the way they breed them. But I worked with another, he was a poultry geneticist. His name was Doug. And he really opened my eyes to the genetics and how important they were. and how to understand it and how to use it and make it practical. Okay. So everybody, and then I had one mentor that I always call him, I tell him, he passed away, but it's the person you want to hang with, that you're not going to exactly learn how to do it, but you're going to learn how not to do it. Okay. He did everything wrong. He medicated, he vaccinated, he didn't know how to select them. His birds were awful, but I learned a lot from him. It wasn't for him with that, having that contrast between my other mentors and him. I don't think I would have learned what I ended up learning. And then I started looking past, the magazines. Like there was a handful of chicken magazines that really opened my world. Not only did I hang around the locals and learned a lot from them, but I was starting to learn what was going on throughout the United States too, which really guided the way I did things and the way I learned things and how I ended up teaching. And then from there, I just started trying to find out who the better breeders were, who everybody thought was the better breeders, and really hanging around. And another one was Bob. He was a really good breeder, and he had some of the best birds I ever seen to this day. And then I started talking to them, studying them, anything they put out, I read. And I started writing down all the things they did in their breeding program, as much as I could gather. Okay. And I started looking at it. If you look at Napoleon, have you ever heard of Napoleon Hill, the self-help guy?
Yeah.
Okay. He did something, and because I used to read his stuff too, and he did something that really hit me, is he studied 500 of the richest and most successful people in the world and pulled out the common denominators that they all did that made them successful. What were the things they all did, and then weeded everything else out. Okay. And then he built his law of success from that. And I was like, yeah, that would be a really good idea. So I started talking to all these different breeders. I couldn't tell you how many I talked to. It was in the hundreds, I'm sure. Okay, over quite a bit of years. And I started doing that. I started saying, okay, what do you do? How do you breed them? What do you don't do? What do you select for? And I started just writing all those things down. And I started seeing the same thing. I started seeing this common denominator. And I started putting it together. And that's how I created the Founders Program. And then I started using it. I started seeing the progress. I showed some of my mentors that were good breeders this, and they go, oh yeah, that's how we do it. It's so funny. Of course, that's how we do it. I go, okay. So then I started sharing with other people, and they were starting to get they were starting to see results from it. And that's really what spurred me to do the Breeders' Academy, that I thought that was a method everybody should know, because there's so many. We have one called the 7/8 method, the 1/16 method, the trio method, the 5/8, 3/8 method. There's so many different breeding methods out there. And then when you compare how they're put together and you compare them to something like the Founders Program, you realize they're junk. They don't get you where you want to go. There's no fixation. There's no improvement. There's no, if you look at, I don't want to say too much, but if you look at the way they're set up and you look at the Founders Program, they're like night and day. And then these guys, you talk to them, they use these programs and they kind of give up because they're not getting the progress they think they should be getting. And then they fall on that old saying that there's no such thing as pure. It doesn't exist. And it's a shame, it really is. So mentorship, finding the right mentors is everything, but it's hard.
It's hard.
Why do you think people are joining the Breeders' Academy? Because they just can't find the right people.
Yeah. And then you got guys who, people got regular life. They don't have time to tell you and show you everything. But if you can get to the confirmation, knowing about the history of your breed, things like that, I say it's strictly science from then on. And you got to have somebody you could talk to in the dog world, but I really love the Breeders' Academy, and I hadn't even really cracked into it like that. It's just the things I've discovered, and then first thing you do, you try to go in there and skip around, but the best thing to do is start right there.
Start with the starting. Yep.
And then you're gonna be like, They got me thinking about doing some other things, but I don't need to do it. I like create my own monster.
Yeah.
But
you can create your own breed. You can. Yeah. That's how it's set up is you can actually create your own breed of dog by using this method. You can improve, you can maintain a family and improve that family of an existing breed, or you can create your own breed. And you can actually do that. But mentorships go both ways. A good mentor has to have the right student. He's got to be willing to learn and listen and put it into practice, because that'll wear you down helping someone and they're just not listening. Okay.
Right.
And then you got to find the right mentor who actually knows what he's talking about, because it's scary how much poor information, misinformation is being passed on the internet,
Right.
So,
right. And then integrity, just what they're breeding right now is just, some of it is just ridiculous. Like, man, why would you do that? You have no values for your program, that stuff kind of irks me. So
I'll tell you, I'm really impressed with the videos you're putting on your channel with Lamont, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the other guy's name that I listened to.
Mr. Muhammad.
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend, if you're into dog breeding, to watch those two videos over and over again, because those guys they really understand the process. They really make sense. They really, I mean, I probably listened to Lamont's 3 times, I think. And
Lamont started me out. He started me out in the
he's impressive.
Yeah, he is. He's been in a long time. And I had to, I talked to him about doing the show, because a lot of people don't know his history in their breed. And I got him to come on, and he killed it. He's a good speaker too. So
you should get him on more often. Yeah.
I need to holler at him again and see, because people really love that show. And Muhammad, he's good.
And that's what I tell people, is to really listen to people. Okay. And you can weed through the, some of them just don't know what they're talking about. They're kind of making them as they go. I always tell people, if you can't, just saying something is one thing, but you got to be able to explain it too. And if you can't explain it, then you don't know it. Okay. And these guys did a great job of bringing up the topic and really explaining it and saying it in a really useful way. And I was just like, wow, I just got so much out of it. I mean, it sounded like, honestly, I kind of thought he was a Breeders' Academy member, the way some of the things he said in there.
Yeah. So, I mean, this year, the channels for me to start out just this year alone, it's been great. You know what I mean? I've got a lot of no's, but I tell people, when I get if I get yeses, I get big yeses, such as yourself. So, yeah.
Well, I hope what we're teaching today resonates with your followers. I know I'm not a dog breeder, but I do believe that breeding is breeding. And I think the principles that we talked about today are going to help them, so.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And let me ask you this.
Sure.
Why do you think the Breeders' Academy can help any breeder?
Because I believe that the process of breeding is the same for all animals. We do select, we have different breeds, we have different species, we select for different things. The traits are different, they have different purposes, but the process of breeding, the programs are the same. Okay. And if you can look at some of the courses like the methods, like inbreeding, maybe line breeding, some of the other ones, the selection process, if you can look at that and in your mind switch the chicken for the dog, it works for everybody. Okay. The genetics, the courses on genetics, I don't know if they'd understanding dominant recessive, understanding polygenics and quantitative traits, I think that'll help you there.
Oh yeah.
But as far as the traits that you guys deal with, the genetic factors of the traits, you're gonna have to probably find somewhere that teaches that to you, because I wouldn't be able to cover that. But I just think that a lot of the courses and the programs and the actual founders program would benefit, anybody. Okay. Yeah. Right. I didn't really intend it to be for other animals, but it's amazing how many other breeders are in there and how much they're getting from it, and like.
Well, you know what? The main things to me that stood out with the Breeders' Academy. This turned into a Breeders' Academy promo.
Well,
look. You have to go there because otherwise we had to talk surface. You know what I mean? Because all of it is when Kenny mentions something in here, or I mention something in here, in the Breeders' Academy, it goes about 100 times deeper. And why? But the main thing that stuck out to me, and what I thrive on in the Breeders' Academy is, first thing that stuck out is I didn't know all the types of breedings. I honestly didn't.
Oh, wow.
You know? Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know about some people mixing line breeding for back crossing and I didn't know that. And one of the main things is when to do something. You know, when to apply this tool. That's what the Breeders' Academy give you. And then it just brings up certain things to talk about, like biosecurity, how you handle your yard, how do you handle your animals, and things like that, and how environment plays, and nutrition. We didn't really get on that. It's a lot different for both of us, but nutrition is a big thing. So, yeah, I just wanted to highlight you to my audience because it is a ton of stuff. If you want to go to the next level of because like you said, like Mr. Muhammad, they don't preach that stuff. Only you're gonna get that stuff from you guys. You know what I mean? So
it's amazing you guys don't have somebody with a website for dogs similar to the Breeders' Academy, because it sounds like people are hungry for information.
They are.
I'm not going to say there's more dog breeders than chicken breeders, but there's got to be a lot of dog breeders out there.
It is a lot of dog breeders, but I know I'm a little bit of a hermit, but I just don't see. There's nothing on the level of the Breeders' Academy, and the real info you can't get unless you get with a really good mentor. You know what I'm saying? Like, for instance, like you got people thinking that like not knowing that other dogs was infused in the Corso and making a big deal about it. You know what I mean? Like,
well, how do you think we got all these different breeds? I mean,
right.
The infusions of different breeds to make the new breed. You know, it's like
exactly
they all came from the wolf, but it was getting a certain animal to a certain state, and then you had this other one. You said, well, let's see what we get, and then they liked what they got, so then they perfected it. You know, one of the people I talk about a lot, not only Charles Darwin when it comes to like natural selection, but Robert Bakewell. Okay. Mm-hmm. That really opened up my world, because when I studied him, he's the one that showed us that there's a science behind it. That if you want to create a new breed, a new variety, a new strain, there's an actual science that can make that happen. And that nothing's created that's uniform, consistent, and reach a certain state of purity if you're not inbreeding. And a lot of people run from inbreeding. They're scared of inbreeding. They fear it. All they see is the detrimental side. They don't realize how good of a tool it is. Well, Robert Bakewell not only showed us that there's a science to breeding that can be used to create new breeds and strains and varieties, but that certain methods needed to be used to make that happen. And so I found him and even Charles Darwin studied Robert Bakewell. And he wasn't even a chicken breeder. He bred horses, cattle, and sheep. Okay. But once he proved that it worked, everybody started following him. And if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have all these different dog breeds. We wouldn't have these different chicken breeds if it wasn't for him, because he's the one that made it happen. Because they were all just breeding anything with it, just breeding this to that, see what they got. If it worked, it worked. They use it for as long as it was functional, and then it was gone. They had to start all over again. So, yeah.
So like I told you a few minutes back, I work with two breeders, Lamont and Tony. I don't cross those dogs. And being that you're a chicken breeder, you can kind of get more on the ground, and the situation is different. Yeah. And in the dog world, we have a kennel partner. So I'm just setting up a lot of people right now, this last breeding to where I'm tracking this. It was a really good breeding I did with Tony Skin, a really good one. And so I placed dogs where I needed to go, sold them to particular people I wanted to get back to and work with. How is that how it works in the chicken world? Or do you just more so, hey, this is my yard, that's your yard, you don't want to get any mixture? Or like you and Frank ever do any mixture of chickens? Okay.
No. Well, that's okay. That's kind of what's happening. And I think that's why everybody's having problems, because they're always adding blood from other people. Right. Okay. I don't think that, and for especially chickens, that's not the way to go.
Yeah.
The idea is to get the best birds possible, run them through like a the cleanup process, the fixation process, to a point where you can start the foundation program, that you can start breeding towards uniformity, consistency, repeatability, okay, functionality. Once you get to a point when they're there, then you have a family. You don't want to, anytime you add new blood, whether I'm sending Frank a bird or he's sending me, we've changed our family forever. The only way I would even consider that is if I like Frank's birds, I'm going to buy or get a pair from him, and I'm going to keep that pure and keep it separate from mine, and just work on improving them from there. But I think in the chicken world, that's where most people fail, because they always think that other guy's animal, the other guy's bird is better than theirs, and always thinking that bird's going to fix theirs or improve theirs. Right. Usually that's not the case. If you feel that way, then get rid of your bird. Get rid of your birds, get his birds, and just do his birds. Okay. Right. But if his birds are better and you're bringing them into yours, not only are you ruining yours, but you're bringing down the level of his birds. Okay. And I wouldn't ever bring any birds into my birds that weren't better than my birds, because, if I thought they could improve them, of course. But if I think they're better, then I would scrap my birds and just use his birds. Okay.
That's right. Yeah. And that's not totally what I meant. What I meant was working the same bloodline, because when you got dogs, you can't keep, like, I can't keep that whole litter,
Oh, I got a good example for that.
So I'll spread them out. What do you think about that?
Okay, let me tell you, and this is where epigenetics comes into play. Okay. Now, Tony and I started with the same birds. Okay. I call my Maximus line. They originated from a breeder called Colonel Givens about 30 years ago. Okay. Him and I got birds from that, and we split them. Okay. Then he moved to South Carolina, and I stayed here. And we both still have that breed. I've never added outside blood. He never has. But guess what? His are different than mine for two reasons: epigenetics, and his selection process. His selection points are different than mine. Because his is different than mine, I would never breed his birds, even though they're pure, even though they came from the same family. I would never breed his birds into mine. And I don't know, he may say the same thing. He may not like mine. He likes his. He would never breed them into his. So there's a danger in that too. Even though you never added outside blood and you can trust that breeder, which sometimes you can't, he's going to select for different things than you would. Over time, they are going to change and they are going to look different. Now, can you do that? Let's say you have a friend just down the road and you guys want to split the animals up so that you can breed more and produce them. Well, and you trust him and he's going to breed. He's not going to add new blood. And can you do that? Well, I guess, but I would be very selective in the animals that you bring back to your place to breed.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. So I it's a big difference. I got alibis too, or Central Asian Shepherds, and not really. They're getting popular in the country, but they're not like that. I shipped over 2 puppies from Serbia a while back, and then I also bought a alibi dog from a breeder in Michigan, and I know another breeder who has a dog off the same litter. I'm in Arkansas and he's in Michigan, and the dogs look different. Yeah.
There's a lot of people say that, well, I have birds here, I got birds there, and if I ever need birds, I can go to them. Well, do you really trust the guy for one thing? He's not going to add new blood, and he's going to select the way you select, and his geographical area is different than yours. What's that going to produce? What is he bringing as far as disease when he brings people on his place? Even though you're doing everything right, can you trust that they are, and that they're going to select the same way you are? It's a risk. It is.
It is, yeah. It is, yeah. It's best to watch over your own stock. Yeah.
Well, I had another guy who, this was about 10 years ago. I hate selling birds. I really do. Always have. And he wanted to kind of go in business with me, in that I would produce the birds, and then I did all the breeding here, and all my extra birds I'd send to him, and he'd sell them. He'd get whatever he could for them, and we'd split the money. Okay. Well, and thank God I didn't breed them into mine, but I went over to this farm and I was like, wow, these birds look good. They look like, and I wouldn't mind maybe breeding them. So I brought them back home and I put them on my farm, and I bred them with themselves. I don't know if it was, I can't remember if it was accidental or just cautious but the birds they produced he added new blood I didn't know about. Thank God it didn't breed them into mine. And
how did you find out?
Offspring, they were coming out completely different.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'll tell you everything.
Offspring always tell on the parents. They always tell you what you want to know about the parents. And and I remember thinking, okay, I'm just going to breed these together and see what I get, because I'm always cautious about it. I've never added new blood into mine, and I never wanted to. And something just told me the cocks and hens that he gave me, that I was just going to breed together. And boy, man, I couldn't believe what I got. And then I said, okay, never again. And once I go over to his place, I'm never bringing them back, ever. So see, I couldn't even trust him. Well, and he told me he never added new blood or he didn't cross them or anything. He did, because they were completely different than mine. So I scrapped the whole bunch and just said, that's it,
Who has been the most influential to you academically when it comes to breeding?
Oh boy, that's a big list.
Give me three.
Living or like, okay, let me Tony. Okay.
Okay.
I got to do this. Tony Seville. Okay. Tony Seville, the selection. Dr. Gallardo with health, and Peter Brown. They've both been instrumental. And Doug, I can't use his last name, but he really opened my eyes to genetics, which, see, all these guys showed me what was important. Then I could go in, get the books I needed, and learn more and expand my knowledge, put it into practice, see what I got. And if it worked, I kept on doing it. So if I want to go into the books now, it'd be Charles Darwin, Gregor Mendel, Thomas Hunt Morgan, Robert Bakewell, those kind of guys. I study those guys religiously, but those mentors I just told you about, and then Bob, because he was a great breeder. He did many of the things in the Founders Program, if not all of them actually, and he had his process of selection and improving the strain really opened my eyes. So I just have between the mentors I hung out with and the ones I learned through my books, the studies of the past, who I call the fathers of selective breeding, they all contribute. I really can't say it's just one person at all. And it wasn't all just the ones that were living that I hung out with too.
Right.
It was a whole thing.
So it's gamecocks you do. So I guess you had to take a lot of the man fighting out of them. You bred away from that, huh?
Well, I raise American games. I'm not into the sports side of it. I'm into the preservation of the breed and all that. Yeah. So, but as far as man fighting, that shouldn't be in any birds, whether it's domestic chickens, game fowl, whatever. If you have you have one that's a man hater or man fighter, you want to get rid of it. That's a selection point. So anytime an animal will go after me or anybody else, gone, I'll cull that thing as fast as I can, and, if I see a flighty hen that's high strung, she usually produces those cocks with the really weird temperaments. A lot of times I'll get breeding for behaviors and temperament is a huge selection point for me. So I want a nice docile hen,
Right. Yeah. How has your family been of a benefit to you in this breeding thing? Because I see your wife, she knows a lot. I see your daughter, she's sometimes on the show. I think I hear on a promo said, "Daddy, I want some more chickens."
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, my other two daughters, they help me out a lot. They're grown up, they have families, and they've moved away. But they really helped me out with the management of the farm and the helping me with the watering and the cleaning up of things. So they really made a difference. It allowed me to do other things. Tani, she helps me out in the farm, helps me with the farm. She's my youngest, and she's one smart kid. I'll tell you. Her and I, we do everything together, and we live right up the street from the wild animal park. They call it the San Diego Safari Park. We go down there, we do our walk-in, and we just talk and talk. She's a great listener, and she always has good advice. So I'll talk to her about breeding. I'll talk to her about the members and the membership and the show, and she really helps me keep my mind straight. And then Nancy's my best friend, so we talk about everything. And I call it my mastermind. Having Frank and Nancy and Tani always around to listen to what I have to say and give me advice. You know, you can think of certain things on your own, but when you have a group of people that you can talk to, you get so many more ideas, you get better advice, you can act on some things better. I'm really lucky. I've got a good family, I've got good friends, and it really made a difference. Absolutely.
Good. Okay, man.
And then she's part of my show. Without her, I don't think I'd have a show, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. So Frank, he's I guess he's another. What state is he out of?
Kentucky. Yeah.
And I guess you mentored him, and then he became a part of the show as well? Or how did that work?
Yeah, kind of. It's so funny because he became a member of the Breeders' Academy. Okay. And he was a member for quite a while before I even knew he was there. And one day he called me for a coaching call. And at the time I didn't have as many members. Okay. I was just starting out. Now I have hundreds of members in there. I might have had maybe 50 members at that time. So whenever I'd get a coaching call, I'd go on their social media or whatever, and I'd look them up and kind of get an idea who I'm dealing with. Okay. And kind of get a feel of how the coaching call is going to go. And I looked at the pictures and he looked like a badass. Okay. He looked like, I'm like, this guy's going to drill me. He's going to question everything. He's going to want me to explain why I say the things I do. He's just going to put me to the task. And I got him on the phone and he was like, kind of like you are. I mean, he was really appreciative of the Breeders' Academy. Couldn't say enough about it. And him and I just hit it off right away. And I think it went beyond a coaching call. We talked for like 3 hours. Okay. And so we had talked a couple more times on the phone, and I just really liked his personality. We really got along well. And then when I was doing the podcast, I don't know if you listen to the podcast or just a live show, but we have a podcast, which is also Bred to Perfection. You can get that anywhere. And then we have the live show on YouTube. Okay. And so when Nancy and I were doing the podcast, we did like 100 episodes or something. And I was thinking about, they came up with StreamYard, the platform that you're using right now. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. So I should do a live show. And I was trying to think of, I was out playing basketball and I was trying to think of who could I get to co-host, because Nancy was already too busy. And I was thinking about this guy and I'm like, well, no. And there's different reasons I didn't want to go with certain people. And then I was thinking about Frank. And so I went and playing basketball, I was listening to the episode him and I did on the coaching call, because at that time I was recording them. And I was listening, and we really hit it off. You could tell there's some back and forth, and it just sounded good. And I liked how I was like, okay, I got to call him up. I said, Frank, what do you think? Would you want to do like a live show with me, be my co-host? And he didn't even hesitate. He said, absolutely, whatever you want to do, Kenny. And it was a hit from day one. And he's just been a great co-host. The camaraderie is really good. Everybody likes chemistry. And I can throw something at him. I know he's going to do something with it. And he's always got, him and I think a lot alike, actually. He knows the website. He knows the founders program. He knows the breeding process. And he turned out to be the best decision that I ever made when it came to my business.
Oh yeah, he's on it, doggone it. Y'all got a really good chemistry on that show, man. Yeah. It's a very good show. Well, Kenny, I'm gonna call it a wrap on this one, man. I really appreciate you coming out, man.
It was fun. I was looking forward to this. I love doing interviews with other people, and being that it's a dog show, and I watched your show, I really liked what you were doing and the kind of episode you were putting together.
Thank you.
Yeah. And tying it in with the breeding and comparing it to chickens, I was like, wow, this is going to be, I just knew this was going to be fun. I was looking forward to it.
Yeah. I want to be a conduit for regular people or people who don't know you hear a lot of people come on my show that say they are masters, and they are, you know what I'm saying? Because I look at people for a while before I, well,
you're lucky. Because you actually have interviewed really good people. And Frank and I, there's a lot of breeders out there in the chicken world, and we've interviewed many of them, and we've talked to them, and we've checked them out, and they're big time. Everybody knows them. They think they're big breeders, but when you actually dig deep into it, you realize they don't really know anything. They don't understand the process. They're just producing birds, and it's like, we've really had a tough time finding good breeders to interview. Because if I'm bringing them on my show, and I don't agree with what they're saying, but I don't challenge them, then I'm being a hypocrite, So they either I have to believe in what they're saying, or I can't have them on the show. So you did really good.
Yeah. And then I do have people love the training videos, and we don't talk about we talk about breeding. Some shows. I'm trying to get it more balanced to where it's breeding and training. People really love the training videos because it's a big debate on defensive training and prey training. So I do that. I let them speak their piece. If you ever notice, it might be a prey trainer on there. It might be all defense. I'm not here to argue. I'm just going to let them show their perspective on it, and you take it from there. Because
I know that my members and my followers and people are even thinking about being a member. I just got to make sure that the information that
they got to be right. When it's coming to breeding and the scientific part about it, it ain't no in between on that.
Am I teaching them something, or am I giving these guys a platform? I want to teach them something.
That's right. Yeah. So, man. So, I'm hoping everybody will give some feedback, and how can everybody not reach you personally, but your YouTube channel, websites, internet, you want to name off?
Yeah. Well, you can view our stuff in many places. As far as the website, you can go to www.breedersacademy.com. There's a free site there. You can join our newsletter. You can start there. You can also become a member at the same address. I do suggest join the newsletter, and I think you'll like what you get from there. And then you can decide whether you want to be a member or not. As far as the show, which helps you show whether, what we're teaching, that how do I want to say this? Resonates with you, I guess you could say. We have a podcast called Bred to Perfection. Any platform, Apple, Spotify, any of those, you can listen to our podcast. Go to YouTube. My channel is Kenny Troiano, Bred to Perfection Live, and you can watch our videos there. We only keep a certain amount of videos on the channel. The rest are all archived on the website, but I usually try to keep about 30 or so, 30 of the newest ones on the YouTube channel. That's basically it, is our show and the website,
Okay, cool. All right.
And the newsletter.
And a newsletter. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So guys, go check that out. It'll be beneficial to me. Trust me. I'm not here to pop nobody up. And so anybody on the show, I kind of do my homework on, and and I'm glad Kenny came in today to share what he knew with us.
I'm glad I did. It was fun. Absolutely.
All right.
And that wraps up another episode of NWA Cane Corsos. Thank you for being a part of our Cane Corso community. Remember, you can stay connected with us beyond the podcast. Find us on all major media platforms by searching for NWA Cane Corsos. Whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or YouTube. Just hit that follow button to join the conversation and get the latest updates. If you have a burning question or want to apply to be a guest on our show, we'd love to hear from you. Simply shoot us an email at nwacanecorsos@gmail.com. And if you're a business interested in becoming a sponsor, reach out to us at the same email address. For more resources, exclusive content, and links to all our social media profiles, visit our website at nwacanecorsos.com. It's your go-to destination for everything dogs. Thank you once again for tuning in, and we can't wait to bring you more exciting episodes where we explore the fascinating world of dogs.